Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching. Passion raged in the expensive and posh Davis mansion. Emily's 20-year-old daughter was at war with her own father, a renowned medical luminary and respected surgeon. "Dad, what do you mean? I need to get married right away. Who does? Me or you? I don't get it. You've been trying to control me all my life. You won't let me breathe. There are only babysitters and guards around. I'm not a child anymore, and I can decide for myself whether it's time for me to get married or not. And I will choose as my husband someone whom I really love in my heart." But Henry Davis was adamant and stood his ground. "Why are you raising your voice to your father? You're losing your temper. Have I ever wished or done anything wrong to you? You always get the best of everything thanks to my efforts, and I know who you should marry. Look at Jeremy Bell, a very promising young man. His father is a famous deputy. He's only 20 and his father has already given him a fancy car and an apartment. I'm sure he'll find his son a nice little place to live, so you'll have a place to live without a care in the world." Emily flared up even more. "Never. I can't stand that pompous braggart who burns through my father's money left and right. And who is he? A zero without a stick." Henry Davis parried, "He's still young. He hasn't found himself. But I support you completely, don't I? I provide for you. I buy you everything. You also drive a nice car and wear brand name clothes." Emily almost screamed. "Exactly, and I'm the same way. And I don't want to be like that. Let me live my own life, not yours. I want to achieve something myself, fall in love, do what I want, do what I want, do what I like." "But you just don't hear me." The girl ran to her room in tears and collapsed on her bed. She took in her hands the portrait of her mother, which always stood on her nightstand, and pressed it to her, whispering, "Mommy, why aren't you with me? You would understand me. Daddy does not want to understand me at all. Again, he's oppressing me. Why is he like that? His love suffocates me. Why is he like that? His love suffocates me. I can't take it anymore." Emily began to look at her late mother's face, closed her eyes, and felt her warm, soft hands, her quiet and affectionate voice and soft smile. Emily's mother died a long time ago when she started first grade. It was sudden and ridiculous. The woman caught a common cold, got wet in the rain, got sick. She didn't go to the doctor for a long time, all treated at home. But her condition worsened, and when she was taken to the hospital, she was diagnosed with advanced pneumonia, and she died suddenly, burning up in a couple of days. Emily was terribly homesick for her mother, crying unhappy about anything. Her father went off to work, became very rich, and opened his own clinic. He was already the leading surgeon of the time, and was booked in for surgery months in advance. For his beloved and only daughter, the man spared neither money nor effort, hiring the best tutors and nannies, buying only the highest quality and most expensive gadgets and toys, taking her to the best resorts, but at the same time supervising absolutely every step of the child. This always irritated Emily because she could not just run with the yard kids, go with them to the river to swim, ride a bike. She was always being followed first by babysitters and then by an invisible chauffeur who seemed to manage to be everywhere. Emily more than once escaped from his watchful eye, for which she received a scolding from her stern father. Dad also controlled her studies very strictly, not allowing her to be lazy or to skip classes, and as a result, Emily left the university as a certified English translator. Now, Emily thought, can I relax and live my life? But it turned out that her father's next plan was to get her married right away. This was the last straw in the girl's cup of patience, and she and her father had a big fight. Henry Davis knew his daughter's stubborn nature, so he didn't put it off. And the next day he invited Jeremy's family over for a dinner party. The boy was fashionably dressed and chattered away, bragging about his recent great vacation in the islands, his surfing, and his participation in a beer festival. His father nodded approvingly, nodding his head in agreement. He was so fat he could barely fit in his chair. Henry Davis, for his part, praised Emily in every way and told her how smart she was, how she'd recently graduated with honors and was the best in her class. And then he went on to the main point. Yes, our children have grown up. It's time to marry them. What do you think of that, gentlemen? I think they'd make a great couple. Both young, handsome, smart, just a looker. Jeremy's father grunted, glared into Emily's greasy little eyes and answered, She seems like a nice daughter-in-law. Decent family. I think she'll do. What do you think, Jeremy? Do you like Emily? The girl erupted in indignation. She was traded like a horse in a circus. It was unheard of. Jeremy was already mentally imagining how he was going to roll with this beautiful and such a stubborn girl who was always turning her nose up and flatly refusing to meet him. And he smiled carnivorously. I like it very much. Let's consider it a tryst. When are we going to have the wedding? Emily asked quietly and angrily. My opinion, I take it, is of no interest to anyone. Right, Daddy? He stepped painfully on her foot under the table and answered aloud as gently as possible. Cute. I wish you nothing but happiness. Stas is a great match. He will be a good husband for you, and I will be calm about your future. Emily jumped up like scolded from the table and ran to her room. My father shouted menacingly, Emily, where are you going? Go back to your guests immediately. It's not nice. The girl defiantly replied, Something's got a headache. It must be from happiness. Emily's father hastened to make amends for the unpleasant scene. You'll have to excuse her. She's still young. She's too sharp. Jeremy's father muttered, Never mind, when she comes to our house, we'll teach her some manners. Right, son? He just chuckled, imagining their first wedding night. He had long dreamed of possessing Xenia, tried to get acquainted with her, but she flatly refused. And now, such luck, their parents had decided to marry them themselves. For Jeremy, it was just an exciting adventure. Emily was furious, called her best friend Valerie, and, swallowing her tears, began to tell her grief. What do you know? He's asking me to marry that pompous peacock, Jeremy. I can't stand him. All he does is go clubbing and spend his father's money. I don't need a husband like that. But he's deaf and blind, and all he sees is their money in front of him. Yesterday he invited those turkeys over for dinner. I could hardly stand it. Jeremy looked at me like that. I don't want to marry him. It's wild. It's medieval. What am I supposed to do, Valerie? I'd have to run away from home, for God's sake. A friend has always been distinguished by unconventional thinking and creative ideas, and immediately jokingly gave out, and you go and spite your father with a tramp. Maybe then he will leave you alone. Emily was stunned. What tramp? Where am I going to get one? Valerie laughed. Are there not enough of them on the street? Just make a deal with anyone to play along, that's all. Give him some money and we'll put on a show. We'll call all the guys from the company, take pictures. Come on, I'm kidding. Don't be offended. It's just a crazy idea, you know me. And Emily suddenly lit up. You know, it's not dope at all. I'm going to tell my father that I'm not getting married to his candidate because I'm already engaged. Would that help? I don't know how to get through to him. I'm going to go look for a fiancé right now. Now, Emily no longer cried, but laughed as she vividly imagined it. Quickly she got dressed, ran out through the backyard to the street so her father wouldn't notice, and wandered around the city looking for a suitable candidate. Never before had she considered those poor vagrants who begged by the subway or rummaged through garbage cans, but now she had to look closer. But the more Emily looked at the drunken, shriveled faces and the unpleasant stench of homelessness, the quicker her fervor waned. She couldn't imagine such a person anywhere near her, even if it was just for fun. Suddenly, near the square, she saw a young, jolly guy in a cap and worn-out jeans. He was playing unpretentious tunes on his guitar, and a curly-haired dog was dancing on his hind legs to the amusement of the audience. Next to the table was a glass, where passers-by who were moved by the concert threw money. I must say the guy was a success. Some even applauded, despite his obviously vagrant lifestyle. The guy did not look like a low-life alcoholic, and his clothes, though very old and tattered in places, were clean. There he is, my perfect match. Found it, thought Emily. She walked up to the tramp, smiled charmingly, and put a large bill in the glass. The guy whistled when he saw the generous gift, winked back at her, and suddenly sang a song about a beautiful dream girl. Passers-by immediately stared at Emily, who blushed involuntarily, and the guy put down his guitar and introduced himself. "Thank you, sweet princess. You really are so beautiful. I've only seen them in magazines. I'm Harry, and this is my faithful friend Rex. Give me your paw and say hello." The dog did indeed immediately extend his paw to Emily, who laughed and patted him back. "How funny. And I'm Emily. You know, Harry, I didn't just come up to you. I've got something to do with you. It's very special. Could you play the part of my fiancé for one evening? I'll pay you well." The guy stared dumbfoundedly at the stranger. "Wow. I've never been proposed to before, and I've never been proposed to by such beauties. Come on, tell me, what do I have to do?" "I was wondering." The girl blushed again and began to explain incoherently. "You see, my father has been overprotecting and controlling me since I was a child. He just doesn't let me breathe. And now he's found me a fiancé, also a rich and feisty rich guy, and I cannot stand it. That just pisses me off. How can I marry someone I don't love? So I want to piss off my father. I'll rent a restaurant, invite friends and photographers, and you'll come there. You'll say you're my fiancé, propose to me in front of everyone, as if we'll get engaged soon. The ring I myself will buy, and about the appearance do not worry. Put on some rags, nepravdashiyu. Oh, then the wedding with the big man will be ruined for sure, and my father will leave me alone. Do we have a deal?" Harry smiled cheerfully. "It's easy. I agree. I even understand you. If there is no love, why torture yourself? And in general, I sympathize with you. You have money, but no freedom. I have, on the contrary, a lot of this freedom, but know where to live and not on what. That's the paradox. Tell me when and where to go. I won't let you down. Don't doubt it." Emily was suddenly worried. "Oh, where would I look for you? You're here and there, aren't you? I'm sure you don't have a phone?" Harry laughed. "There really is no phone. And I live at the janitor's in the back near the Romashka store. Martin's took me in. There's a couch and bedding, and there's a bed for Rex, and I sweep his yards at dawn instead of paying the rent. When no one is looking, you can find me there if you need me. So long, bride. It's time for Rex and me. Goodbye." Emily rubbed her hands together, immediately called Valerie, told her everything, and the pair of them began the elaborate preparations. They booked a banquet at an upscale restaurant, invited close friends, acquaintances, and photographers. Emily bought herself a gorgeous dress with a huge neckline in the back and stiletto shoes. On the eve of the event, she gave her fiancé an exquisite ring and a red case. And so it began. All the guests were assembled, and the photographers had their ears open. When Harry arrived at the restaurant, they didn't let him in right away. An old worn jacket, knee-hole pants, and tattered galoshes embarrassed the guards, but Emily personally gave the young man the go-ahead to get in. Harry gasped when he saw his fiancée in her evening gown and exquisite hair, and he walked up to her, casually embraced her in front of everyone, so dashing and masterful, and whispered, "You certainly look like a goddess in that outfit. I'm blown away. But honestly, In jeans and a windbreaker, you're a real... Then at the celebration table, he took a scarlet box out of his pocket, got down on one knee as was his custom, and gave such a heartfelt speech that even Valerie, who had known about the play from the beginning, gaped at him. So believable it was. Harry, looking into Emily's eyes, said, "My beloved, tender, sweetest, and most beautiful, marry me. I promise to take care of you, to carry you in my arms, and not to let anyone hurt you. Do you agree?" Emily responded, "Yes, I agree," and the guy put a ring on her finger. This exciting moment was immediately snapped by photographers. In spite of the dumbfounded and astonished faces of the guests, there was a celebration, a feast and dancing till they dropped. Why should the good go to waste? After all, the table was bursting with delicious and expensive treats. Emily and Harry were partying heartily, dancing the night away to the fiery music. The guy was so easy to be with, so free and easy to be yourself. Toward the end of the evening, Emily became very nervous. "Harry, I'm so scared. I can imagine what a scandal that would be. My father would kill me." The guy said, "Emily, tell me, aren't you tired of living like a puppet at your father's behest? You're living someone else's life, not your own. Spit on the wealth, get out of the house, start your life from scratch, and become at last yourself. Take a risk. You're a cool girl. I like you a lot, but I feel sorry for you. Will I see you again? I'd love to show you a different free life that you know nothing about." The girl thought hard about Harry's words, and really no one had ever asked her what she wanted, had they? What did she want to be? How to live? How to live? Her influential father had always decided everything for her. Maybe it was time to change everything. If not now, when? In the morning, Emily awoke to her father's frantic screaming over her ear. Her head ached from last night's champagne, and her feet were humming from dancing. Henry Davis shook the morning edition of the local paper over her head and shouted, "What is this? What engagement, and who's that bum next to you? Are you out of your mind? Try to explain. Get up now." Emily was shaken up inside. Her sleep vanished like a lightning bolt. The newspapermen were quick. "You couldn't tell," she answered. "This, Daddy, is my engagement. And my fiancé's name is Harry. So now getting married to Jeremy is out of the question, which I'm really happy about. And I'll marry that tramp if I have to, but not Belle, okay? And if you push me, I'll leave the house." Henry Davis was furious. He tore that wretched newspaper into little pieces and went on his rampage. "Do you realize what you've done, silly girl? Now the whole town will be buzzing with the news that a famous surgeon's daughter is marrying a bum. You're not Belle. You're not Belle. You've ruined my whole reputation, you bitch. You say you're leaving home. Well, go back to your bum then. Live on your bread. You won't get a penny from me, understand? You'll get over it. You'll realize how much good your father did for you." The man jumped out of his daughter's room in anger, and his phone was already bursting with calls from Jeremy's father. A serious conversation was brewing, because almost everything was ready for the wedding, and even distinguished guests were invited. And then this. Emily cried and packed her suitcase, taking only the essentials. She decided to sell her grandmother's jewelry, which she had left her as a keepsake, so she wouldn't have to take money from her father, and he blocked her bank cards right away. Then the girl rented an apartment in the suburbs and moved there. She did not know what to do next. In the new place, in a modest apartment, Emily was wild and unaccustomed, and she decided to visit Harry. She wanted to tell someone about everything. These new changes in life were very sudden and abrupt, and greatly frightened the girl. He was genuinely pleased with her. "Oh, hello, bride." "Rex, say hello. Would you like some tea?" Emily almost cried. "I left home, and I had a big fight with my father. He yelled at me so much. He blocked all my cards, told me I'd be crawling back soon. and I'm kind of glad, but I'm so wild. It's all, I do not know how to live independently, accustomed to obey my father and do what he says. Where to start? What do I do? I'm like a fish that was thrown on the shore, gulping for air and wondering if I'll survive or not. Harry immediately made a decision. You need some time first to come to your senses, to adapt. Let's take the next week. Don't think about anything, just live. And I'll show you everything I know about freedom. And then you can decide what you want to do. All right. All right then. What do we need? Matches, a blanket, bread and potatoes. That's it. Oh, and sausages in my guitar. And some tea in a thermos. That's it. Quickly get ready and follow me. A dumbfounded Emily asked, Where? I don't understand. Harry winked at her. Don't worry, bride, I won't hurt you. I'll show you such beauty that all your jewelry will fade. Well, cheer up. So they went on a hike. At first, they hitchhiked, and Harry entertained the driver with merry songs instead of money. Then they walked for a long time along winding paths out of town, into the woods. Finally, when it was getting dark outside, Harry exclaimed, That's it, we're here. Come here, Emily. Look at the view from up there. What a beautiful sunset, what nature. There's a stream with spring water nearby and a lake. This is my favorite place. I used to come here as a child. Nature heals and soothes. It infuses you with the energy of trees, the free wind. Can you smell freedom? Emily really looked up at the vast, dark sky and feathery clouds, the huge red sun that was slowly sinking below the horizon, the swaying, mighty treetops, and she couldn't breathe. How wonderful it was. Why hadn't she noticed such simple things before? After all, it wasn't far from the city, and she'd never even been here. Meanwhile, Harry made a fire and began to roast bread and sausages on ordinary sticks cut from trees, and then potatoes in the coals. The girl ate the treat in the fresh air and wondered how delicious it was. So simple and so delicious. And then Harry stirred the coals, and they crackled and burned, and the boy sang beautiful, intimate songs to her. Harry had a very pleasant timbre to his voice, and Emily listened to him. She had never rested like that, just like an ordinary camper, or eaten crusty bread and tasty baked potatoes, or sat soulfully around a campfire like that, where you could be yourself, sing along to the beat, and think about nothing. Just enjoy the moment. For a whole week, Emily and Harry just walked around the park holding hands, eating delicious vanilla ice cream, riding the carousel, and having fun. They talked a lot. Harry talked about his miserable fate. Mom put me in an orphanage when I was 3 years old. Just like that, she took me by the hand, put me on the porch and said, Farewell, son. You'll be better off here. Forgive me, I can't raise you. She turned around and left. I remember how I cried and screamed when the nannies took me to the orphanage, and I called for Mommy. I believed that she would come to her senses and come back for me, but how could a mother forget her own son? It turns out she can. When I was a child, I was angry and hated her for a long time, and then I forgave her. After all, I don't know what happened to her, do I? Why did she do what she did? So I have no right to judge her. The orphanage was hell, of course. I fought and dug my teeth out for a place in the sun. When I became a teenager, I realized that if I stayed there any longer, I was finished. After all, most of the guys were already drinking heavily and smoking, and not just cigarettes. So I ran away for good. I've been wandering around the world ever since. I've been sheltered here and there. I even lived in a gypsy camp for a month. They taught me how to sing and gave me a guitar. I take life easily and take it as it is. A man does not really need much in life. A crust of bread and a glass of water. There's a good saying, what does it matter how old your sneakers are as long as you wear them to walk around Paris? Emily talked about herself. It was just the opposite for me. My mother died very early when I was 7 years old, and then my father raised me alone. He loved me very much, even too much. He constantly decided everything for me. I lived as if in a golden cage. It was like I had everything, and you could buy everything, but you were not allowed to do anything yourself. Since childhood I loved haircuts. I myself have mastered a few hairstyles. Even friends at parties I dyed and styled their hair. I really like it, to my liking. But as soon as I mentioned it to my father, I immediately heard, "Don't make it up." What hairdresser? Don't disgrace your family name. You will go to the most prestigious university. Choose the department yourself. But better go to the interpreter. You know French very well, right? That's what I call a decent profession. And I became a translator. And I studied brilliantly, and I was the first in my class. And I was set as an example for everyone. But no one noticed that I didn't dream of becoming a translator or working in a school. And that's how it is with everything. Harry suddenly said, "You know, you're the first person in my life with whom I want to try to change, to start living differently, and let's get out of here. For good. To another city where no one knows us, and start a new life from scratch." Emily babbled, frightened. "I don't know. Where are we going to live? I can't sleep here and there. Of course I have my grandmother's money. I sold her jewelry." Harry hurried to reassure her. "Emily, I'm not a fool to suggest that such a lovely girl should lead a wandering life. That's not what I wanted to tell you. I really like you. No, you don't. I love you. And you make me want to be different. Go away, get a job, live together, have kids, you know. You've changed me in just a couple of weeks. I don't want to wander anymore. And I don't want to lose you." The girl blushed. Blushing at these words, she replied, "I fell in love with you too. Believe me, from the first minute I saw you and Rex in that square, you're different too. You don't care if I'm rich or who my father is, or who my father is, or who my father is, or what people think. You saw me as a person, my essence, my soul, and that's priceless. And I like that in you. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go tomorrow, before my father comes to his senses and starts looking for me. You can't hide from him in this town. He'll find me everywhere. For some reason I believe you, even though I know very little, and I'm ready to risk and go on my own, independent voyage, together with you. We'll rent an apartment. I'll take a hairdressing course, you'll find a job, and we'll live as we want. No one can tell us." Harry pulled Emily resolutely to him and kissed her passionately on the lips. The girl literally had the ground beneath her feet, and millions of butterflies fluttered in her stomach. Such emotions she had certainly never felt for anyone before. 6 months passed. Henry Davis had lost all peace and sleep ever since. After the deafening scandal of the wedding cancellation, he was looked down upon and often whispered behind his back that his daughter was a blissful fool, and instead of marrying a rich groom, she ran off with some street vagabond. What a shame! The surgeon hated that tramp, though he had never seen him. How dare he take away his dearest treasure, his little girl? And Emily, what was she missing? Why had she done such a thing? She had the best of everything, not like everyone else. Live happily ever after. Why did she decide to run away with that beggar? What was in her head? But as angry as Henry Davis was at his daughter for her antics, he still missed her desperately. For all the years since his wife's death, he had never been able to love anyone else, had never let anyone into his heart, and so he had given the whole avalanche of feelings to his beautiful little daughter. Yes, maybe he was overly shaking her, patronizing her, worrying about her, controlling her. But it was only out of great love, out of the best intentions. And now, without Emily, the house was completely deserted. The man wandered in the evenings through the rooms, drinking bitter coffee and often crying secretly, sitting on his daughter's bed and holding in his hands her silk pajamas with funny bears, thrown in a hurry. Henry Davis hadn't really intended to drive his daughter out of the house. He'd only wanted to teach her a lesson. He thought she'd get over it, get over her misery, and then come home and appreciate her father and thank him. And that's how it turned out. 6 months later, and not a word from Emily. Not a phone call, not a letter. My father's heart bled. He wondered how his little girl was doing. What about her? The man tore off her phone, but all he heard in response was the subscriber is temporarily unavailable. Finally, the surgeon couldn't take it anymore and hired a private investigator to track down Emily. He wanted to go and beat the crap out of that bum for taking his daughter. And by hook or by crook, he wanted to bring Emily home. After all, life without her, as it turned out, had no meaning. A week later, he was brought directly to work Emily's address. Now she lived in another city, 100 kilometers away, and had the last name Parker. The man was shocked, which meant that his daughter had really married that bum. God, we had to save our little girl right away. Maybe she was in need, malnourished. Henry Davis was even angrier at the tramp and drove with a great desire to just plain kill him. Until this Harry showed up in Emily's life, everything had been wonderful. The surgeon arrived at the right address, an ordinary high-rise, a nice quiet neighborhood, not like a slum, took the elevator and firmly pressed the doorbell. He was opened by the same bum, Harry, only he didn't look like a hobo at all now. He was fashionably trimmed, normally dressed, and quite well fed. Not only that, his face was painfully familiar, but Henry Davis was unstoppable. And he came at the boy with almost no more than a fist. "You bastard! It's all your fault. Where's my daughter? Where did you take her? Confess, why did you come into our lives? Emily, my girl, I've come for you. Get your things at once." Harry shook the surgeon and calmly replied, "Good day to you too, Daddy. Let's not make a row, but let's calm down and go to the apartment." The daughter jumped out at the noise and was dumbfounded. "Dad, how are you here? Why did you come? Why are you shouting? I'm fine." It was only in the apartment, in the daylight, that the surgeon got a good look at the guy's face, and his jaw dropped. He was an exact duplicate of a man the surgeon had known in his youth. Henry Davis began to whisper, "Harry, Parker. That's right. What was your father's name and your mother? And why were you on the street?" The surprised guy replied, "Dad's name was Roger, and he was how shall I put it gently, a bandit. He was killed when I was about 3 years old in some shootout. And Kimberly's mom, she left me at the orphanage. Why, I don't know. It still haunts me to this day. I barely survived. I ran away when I was 15. I didn't have a place to live, so I wandered around the world. It was only when I met your Emily by chance that I fell in love with her so much that I decided to start my life over again. Now I'm not a bum. I work at a construction site. I'll finish night school and go back to school. I make good money. We have enough." The surgeon stared at him in amazement, then suddenly dropped to his knees and began to whisper, "I'm sorry, Harry, but I know why your mother left you and how your father died. You look just like him. You look just like him. Forgive me if you can. I am to blame for your fate. I am such a wretch. It's been so many years, and I do not even think that I broke a man's life." Harry and Emily didn't understand anything. The girl thought her father had lost his mind in a nervous breakdown. She was very frightened and ran to her father. "Dad, get up. What are you doing? What are you talking about? Here, drink this. I gave you some sedative drops. Tell me everything in order." "Did you really know Harry's father? I never would have guessed that." The man drank a sedative in one gulp, caught his breath, and began to talk. That was back in the 90s. Those were troubled times. Redistribution of territory, and banditry was flourishing. I was already the head of the surgical department. A lot of people in town knew me. Then one day a criminal, Roger Parker, was brought straight to my house. He was badly wounded, dying. I told him right away that there was no chance of saving him, especially at home. But he was begging to be saved. So I tried. Even though I removed the bullets, but the bleeding still did not stop, Roger did not stop. Roger did not have long to live. So I told him honestly. Then he whispered in my ear, in pain, "Listen, doctor, I have a case. I have a dacha outside the city, plot number 310. It has long been abandoned. Well, there's a lot of money in a black briefcase under the roof of the barn. Where from? Don't ask. You take some for your trouble, and take the rest to this address. My wife and son are there. They'll be in trouble without me. So give them the rest. Please, I can't ask my brothers to do that. I know they'll take it all for themselves. But you're an honest man. You won't let me down. Remember, it's my last will." And Roger died in my arms. His brothers were very unhappy that I hadn't saved their friend. They started threatening him, but then they cooled down and took the body with them. I didn't really believe Roger's dying words at first. I thought he was delirious, but curiosity got the better of me. So I drove over to the cottage. And what do you think? There I really found a briefcase full of money. And that's when the devil got me. Greed took over. I took it all for myself, and I didn't take anything to Roger's wife. I knew that no one but me knew about the money. I opened my own clinic, bought expensive equipment, and became rich. I bought a mansion, got married, then Emily was born. And everything went so smoothly, family, work. Then my wife died, and I began to raise my daughter alone. And now, years later, when I saw Harry, I realized what I'd done. If I had done the right thing and given the money to Roger's wife, things would have turned out differently for you, Harry. You wouldn't be poor, you'd have a new life, and your mother wouldn't have had to put you in an orphanage. Don't hold it against your mother. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I was living high and mighty, and you poor thing was suffering in the orphanage and was malnourished. I'm the last bastard. You shouldn't have done that. It wasn't human. Forgive me, boy. If you can, Henry Davis was terribly ashamed, so he sat down on the couch and covered his face with his hands and sobbed silently. Harry hadn't expected to hear that from his stern father-in-law. He didn't know how to react, just blinked and kept silent, digesting what he'd heard. Emily was overwhelmed with mixed feelings. On the one hand, madly sorry for Harry because really broken fate, no childhood, and all because of someone else, and on the other hand, sorry for her father when he was crying now, still repented, admitted his mistake, realized everything, though it was too late. The girl tried to smooth things over somehow and said, "You know what, let's all calm down and have some tea. Daddy, you go in the kitchen. I'll make your favorite with bergamot. Don't call me back, Pa. I'm not going. Look, I'm not going back. Pa, I'm not going. Look, I'm perfectly happy here with Harry. I've become myself. Yes, I may not be a cool translator, but an ordinary hairdresser. We do not live in a cool mansion, but in an ordinary rented apartment. And eat for breakfast is not cream cheese, but the usual oatmeal. But I have so much more. Favorite job that I love. A husband I love. I don't have to conform to anyone. I don't have to adjust to anyone. I am me, and I don't need more than that." Henry Davis stared at his daughter in amazement. Her eyes lit up. She looked so handsome, so fondly at Harry, and it was obvious that she was really happy. He even felt a little hurt. Was it possible that he had tried all these years for nothing, achieving success, fame, giving his daughter a brilliant education? And why? If she didn't need it all, he suddenly realized that in this frantic, mad race, he had not lived at all. He was afraid of missing the deadline, of not making enough money, and life was passing him by, waving at him. Maybe he should have stopped, breathed a little, looked around and just lived, enjoying each day, enjoying the simple things, little things, as his daughter did. Maybe she was right. Harry suddenly said quietly, "I don't hold it against you, Henry Davis. Honestly. I don't think that blood money from gangsters would have made me and my mother happy. It would have saved the family. No, it's all about the man himself. No matter how hard it is, Isn't every mother going to take her child by the hand and take her to an orphanage? Of course not. You had to fight, learn to survive, go to work. And the mother gave up, broke down. She got confused, or something else I don't know. In any case, you can't undo the past, no matter how much you want to. Yes, I had been through a lot, but I tried not to lose heart, to enjoy a ray of sunshine, a fresh bun, a free wind, and freedom. But when I met Emily, something in my mind changed. I suddenly didn't want to live as a vagabond, and I couldn't bear to part with her. I realized that this was the person I wanted to live the rest of my life with, to love her, to cherish and care for her. You should be proud of your daughter because she was not spoiled by money and wealth, and she did not become one of those glamorous, empty girls who only think about salons and resorts. But she remained herself and kept her soul. You don't see that very often now. The world has gone rotten. People have become insane in the pursuit of fame and money. They have stopped appreciating what the Lord God gives them. It's scary. But Amelia and I continue to enjoy each other every day. In every little thing, even the ordinary things, you can find a positive. It's sunny and warm outside. Great. We definitely go for a walk with Rex in the park, basking in the caressing rays. It's raining and cold, no problem either. We make hot chocolate and sit, wrapped up in a warm rug, watching a heartwarming movie. Bad weather is raging outside, but we are so cozy and warm. And this, too, is a little happiness. Emily and I have the same world, Henry Davis answered quietly. It seems that only now I'm beginning to understand it. I see that my daughter is happy. She lives modestly and simply, and she's happy. What a paradox. I only now realize what a mistake I almost made if I had married Emily to Jeremy against her will. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing, and that if my daughter was provided for, she would automatically be happy. You're right, Harry. I did become obsessed with money, with my career, and I stopped seeing my soul, stopped considering other people's interests, and stopped just living. Even my favorite work has long ceased to please me. And once in my youth, I took up every case with such fervor, enthusiasm, and wanted to sincerely save a person's life. Even now, I seem to be doing everything correctly. Everything is brought to automatism, but I am bogged down in papers, reports, and all this routine, while my vocation is a surgeon, no matter how hard it is. My darlings, don't drive me away. It's gotten so lonely in the big house without you. My daughter, so dreary. What have I got all this money for all by myself? What to do with it? What to do with it? And another thing, Harry. Any wish you want, your deepest wish, I promise to fulfill. Think about it. The guy immediately responded. There's nothing to think about. Help me find my mother. I want to know if she's alive or not, what's wrong with her, if she needs help, and just see her, look her in the eyes, talk to her, ask her why she did what she did, what she did. This question has tormented me since childhood, and I want to find an answer to it. Henry Davis promised, "Okay, Harry, I heard you. We'll find your mother. Don't worry. I'll bring in the best specialists. When I found out that my only and beloved daughter was secretly engaged to some tramp off the street, I wanted to tear you into 1,000 pieces. It's such a shame. And then Emily ran away, left no address, nothing. I was angry, I was furious. I thought she was going to be poor and moneyless with you, and then she'd come running back. But no, days, weeks, and months went by, and still no daughter. I thought I was going crazy. Honestly, I forgave her long ago, forgot all the hard feelings. Just wanted her to come home. I even drove to you today with one thought. To deal with you, it seemed to me that you, Harry, were the cause of all the troubles. And when I saw you, I went crazy. I remembered everything. I swear I won't interfere with your happiness anymore. I just want to be near you, to come and visit you, to talk to you. Don't deny your father such a little thing." They chatted and dined and drank tea for a long time. Then Harry did some fun tricks with Rex and sang songs with his guitar, and Henry Davis caught himself thinking how good and comfortable he felt here, everything simple without any tinsel or ostentation. From the first glance, he could see that there was a real understanding and feelings between Emily and Harry. They looked at each other so much. The surgeon realized that he could only dream of such a son. In-law he would never hurt, betray his daughter. As promised, Henry Davies had made all his connections and found Harry's mother, though it was not easy. She had lived in a convent for many years and was an ordinary novice. She had worked herself to the bone and prayed day and night. At first the woman flatly refused to talk to both the private detective and the surgeon, categorically refused to contact. And then Harry himself went to see her at the monastery. The elderly abbess, Mother Rebecca, came out to him. "Maid Kimberly has lived at the convent for 10 years. They found her on the street. She was drunk and beaten, in a very serious condition, and I don't know why they brought her here to us. It must have been God's will. We don't keep people here by force. You understand, it's everyone's personal choice. When Kimberly came to, we fixed her up, but she refused to leave. She said she couldn't. She'd be lost on the street. So she stayed here. She is a reserved person. She didn't tell us much about herself. But she works hard, doesn't spare herself, and frantically prays. Wait here. I'll try to talk to her. But if she refuses to see you, alas, I can't help her. I won't force her." Harry sat, worried, so calm, so quiet within the walls of the monastery. Suddenly the heavy oak door creaked open, and a thin, tall woman in a black robe and a headscarf appeared on the threshold. The boy looked into her eyes, the same cornflower ones with the squint he remembered well from his childhood, and said softly, "Hello, Mother. It's me, Harry, your son." The woman's eyes immediately moistened, and she fell to her knees and began to cross and wail. "Harry, my son, I recognized you. Forgive me, my darling, my darling. My sin is so great, so indelible. It's my fault for putting you in an orphanage. I abandoned my own child to strangers. I'm not a mother, a cuckoo. There's no forgiveness for me. I will bear this cross to the end." She put her arms around his legs and kissed them frantically. Harry immediately rushed to his mother, lifted her off his lap, and held her close to him. It was finally happening. When he felt his mother's warmth, felt her frantic heartbeat, breathed in the smell of incense, all resentment, all childhood sorrows, all anger evaporated and vanished at once. He just held her there in his arms and cried for a long time, and with each tear all the bad, all the negativity from his wounded soul was gone. Then they sat down on a high wooden bench and began to talk heart to heart. "Tell me, Mother, what happened then? How did it happen that you put me in an orphanage? I vaguely remember that you loved me, how you put me to bed, how you took me for walks. What happened?" The woman sighed. "When your father died, it was a bad time. Your daddy was a bandit, but he took care of his family. He didn't let anybody hurt him. And he provided us with everything we needed. After he died, a month later, some people came and said Roger owed them a huge sum of money and that I had to pay it immediately or they would kill us. They kicked us out of the apartment and took it away for debts. That's how I ended up with you, little one, on the street. At first I lived here and there with acquaintances. But you know, your father's acquaintances are also very special people. I started drinking a lot and I had no idea what to do with you. So I broke down and took you to the orphanage myself. I'm sorry, son. I remember that day as I do now, how poor you were crying, screaming, and holding out your hands to me. It seemed to me then that I was saving you and that you would be better off in an orphanage than wandering with me, a good for nothing in strange other people's apartments. But when I was all alone, I thought I was going crazy. Your screaming and crying eyes were in my ears all those years. I was desperately bored, cursing myself and drinking myself to death. I had gone down the drain, had hit rock bottom. I couldn't remember my name. I didn't care what I looked like or what I wore. I didn't even look like a woman anymore. I was just frantically looking for a drink to forget myself. When I woke up in the convent, I thought I had finally disappeared and was in heaven. In God's judgment, they helped me a lot here, healed me. And I refused to leave. I stayed here. I was afraid of that evil world. I knew I was weak and would snap again. I've been living here ever since, working and praying day and night for you, my son. I haven't forgotten you for a minute. My conscience has always burned with a burning iron, branding a bastard inside me. I hate myself for what I did. Hurry, forgive me if you can. The guy kept wiping away his tears with the back of his hand and talking. Mom, I forgave you a long time ago, honestly. Before, as a child, when I was beaten by other children, when I was hungry and ran away, I did not hide it. I was angry and ran away. I did not understand why you did that. Why did I have to go through all this? And I was desperately jealous of the kids at home who had a home, a family, and loving parents. At 15, I finally ran away from the orphanage. Couldn't stay there any longer, and never went back. I wandered around, traveled around a lot of cities, saw all kinds of people, and I even fell in love with that kind of freedom, the free life. I don't know who sang in our family, but the gypsies taught me how to play the guitar and sing songs. So I wandered around with my faithful dog Rex, earning my bread with my song. And then I met this wonderful girl, Emily, and she changed me completely. We moved to another city, rented an apartment. I work at a construction site now as a foreman. Emily is a hairdresser, and we got married. We hope to have babies soon, too. I'm glad I found you, Mummy, that we saw each other. I haven't been mad at you for a long time. I understand everything. If you want, you can live with us. Amelia and I would be only too happy. I wish I could take care of you, love you, make up for all the things I missed out on. But Kimberly shook her head. No, son, I'm not leaving here. This is my place, my cross. This is where my soul has found salvation. I am very glad that you have grown to be such a wonderful man, that you have not become embittered, and that you have not gone down the wrong path, as I did, and got married. I wish you and your wife nothing but happiness, and I will pray earnestly that God will send you children. But I don't want to go back. I have done too many sins in my life. I can't wash them away till I'm dead. Farewell, my son. Go with God. Let me hug you one more time to say goodbye. Know that I love you too, and have never forgotten you. Kimberly crossed her son goodbye and gave him her cross with the words, Let him keep and protect you from all sorrows and misfortunes. Forgive me, dear one, for everything. Harry left, and Kimberly fell back on her knees before the images, beating her forehead and asking God's forgiveness for her sins, and thanking her for this unexpected meeting with her son. The boy went out of the monastery, crossed himself, looking back at the golden domes, and felt an incredible relief in his soul, as if a huge stone had been removed. Even breathing seemed to become easier. He needed and important to him exactly those words, said his mother, that she loved him and never forgot. So what if she was like that? Everyone has the right to choose their own way. You cannot judge her for that. The important thing was that he now knew where she was, that she was all right, and that she was well looked after. Life went on as usual. Harry and Emily lived soul to soul, and Dad visited them often now. Henry Davis had changed completely, or rather his own daughter had changed him. He bought them a spacious apartment, and he sold his clinic, donated all the money to charity, helped orphanages and foundations in the city that helped treat children with serious illnesses. He did not regret his action and did what he thought was right. He himself got a job as an ordinary surgeon in the city hospital, and in his spare time he spent with his daughter and son-in-law, secretly dreaming of grandchildren. He and Harry went fishing together. It turned out to be so wonderful, cooking fish soup over a campfire and watching the sunrise with the morning bite. And soon, at his new job, Henry Davis met a nice woman, Madeleine, a nurse on duty. She was of the most ordinary appearance, plump, short, with a sweet and open face. But since some time the appearance did not interest the man, he fell in love with her soul, because Madeleine was so kind and good person that it was simply impossible not to love her. They began to meet and then live together. He introduced Madeleine to his daughter and son-in-law. They all quickly found a common language and often spent time together. They lived simply like everyone else, but what a joy it was to wake up, to smell something inexpressibly delicious, and to realize that you were not alone. Madeleine's sweetheart is in the kitchen making them breakfast, or falling asleep snuggled up against the dearest person in the world. These moments are much more important and expensive than any money, fame, or honor, because they fill the soul and life with real meaning.